Yeah. Welcome everybody to the lovely Counterpoise podcast show today. We have a good one on store for everyone. I am your host, Everett Stevenson, joined by my other lovely host.
Hi guys, I'm Malik Foster, another co-host for the Counterpoise podcast.
And I am the third, certainly not the last, but not the least, co-host Samantha Adams. But like you said, yeah, we got a good one for you. But we always got good ones for you because we just good like that. But not to toot our own horn or anything. But today we are going to be talking about anti-isms, right? And it's a little term we kind of made up. And it is pretty much how America deals with its conflicts, both foreign and domestically, and how all that relates to the culture. But what triggered this conversation was the conflict that's going on over there in Israel and Palestine. And I noticed, I mean, I didn't just notice it, but I knew that none of us had really addressed it. And I think it's important to address because we always want people to support Black folks and our cause and the things that we have going on. And we can't effectively do that without talking about some of the other things that are going on globally, right? Because even those things that happen globally, they do have an effect on our culture. And just, a little quick tidbit or a quick little history lesson. The Israel-Palestine conflict has been going on since Bible days. And essentially they're fighting over land. I mean, there's a lot more into it that goes into it, but that's at the foundation of the conflict or war or whatever you want to characterize it as. They're fighting over land. And recently, I'm not really sure what the trigger was this time around, but they've had several ceasefires. But right now, Israel is bombing the hell out of Palestine, and it's not to say that Palestine hasn't tried to retaliate or do anything like that, but they're bombing the hell out of them. And the United States provides weapons to Israel. They're an ally. So just based on that, what are you guys thoughts, or if you have any information you want to add, or what's up?
Yeah, I was gonna say that as it relates to the U.S. Relationship with Israel, it's they provide Israel with well over like around or about $3 billion. I read an article back in at least in 2019 that U.S. has provided them well over $3.9 billion of foreign aid. So that's a lot of money. I know we provide them weapons, as you mentioned, Sam. And there was in the most recent, I guess, war you could say between Israel and Palestine, over 220 Palestinians were killed and about a dozen Israelites. So that's something that I know. And I think the U.S. so far they haven't been too assertive, in my opinion, and aggressive. I guess they've just been supplying weapons on the low. I haven't seen too much in the news about the U.S. involved. I know they've been trying to force a ceasefire, so they don't want any more conflict. So that's a good thing. I think they're handling the situation okay. So that's my opinion. I think they're doing okay with that for once.
Yeah, as far as the things that I'm abreast to within U.S. relations and Israel, I definitely think that I know that our country has had a strong tie with Israel, and like you said, besides just providing aid through weapons as well as aid with ammunition and arms. And as we've seen in these times or recently, how that has played out for others in that region has been kind of tragic. But again, this is something that's been going on for a while. I think the U.S., stepping in and asking for a ceasefire is something that's good for the region, as it will allow for hopefully no longer bombings to occur. And I think that that's of course, that's something that definitely will be good for people overall. But you
Hey, E, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're having a hard time hearing you. Can you turn your volume up a little bit, please?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say you would hope to see that people are able to like bring each other back and to be able to, like you said, stop any more deaths and any more lives from being taken through this tragedy. So that's something I definitely wanted to say. I do apologize, but I was, if anyone didn't hear me earlier, but I was just saying that the fact that our country does provide aid as far as with ammunition, as far as with funding within that region, it is partially, I'll say, not the responsibility, but it would be behooving of them to make sure that peace remains and stability remains in that area for their allies and others. So I'm hoping the ceasefire is something that does well for that region and hopefully stops lives from having to be tragically taken for those that's in that area that have nothing to do with the things that's going on behind closed doors that's causing these conflicts.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I do agree with you in that aspect, either that the United States does have a certain level of accountability, since we do provide, weapons and funding and stuff like that to Israel, which is why it's important to encourage a ceasefire because, I mean, so many people have died. You know what I mean? And also a lot of children, which is scary. A lot of children have died. One of the things I did want to quickly touch on as it relates to that before we switch gears a little bit is how all that relates to the Black community, right? Um, Historically, when you're talking about Palestinians, right? There's a subsect of the community that is rooted in African nationality. That's African. They have African roots. I'm not going to say that they're necessarily directly from Africa, but just much like Black Americans, they were living in that country and they were enslaved, and that's like stemming way back to like the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th century, right? But there is that history there. And so, when you talk to some people will say that Palestinians have been oppressed. Not all, but there's this historical oppression there, right? As it relates to especially those of African descent, much like Black people here in America. But on the flip side to that, everybody knows about the Holocaust and knows that, the Jews were almost annihilated by the Nazis simply for being Jewish. And that, Judaism is not solely a religion, it's also a race. And so I think it's important to just recognize that you have this clash that's been going on for a very long time, and a lot of people are getting hurt. And like you guys both said, I agree. I think that it's, they're fighting over land, but we are all on this planet together and we got to share it as long as we're here. And I think a ceasefire is important because we have to learn how to live together. I know I've said that before. And with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and switch gears slightly to the anti-Asian hate bill, right? because based on, we did a whole segment on this bill before, but I think it's important to touch on here today for the simple fact that we're talking about anti-isms. Like anytime you're against anything, how is it being dealt with? What are the isms that relate to it, right? And with the anti-Asian hate bill, I know that they're getting ready to sign it, which is great for the Asian community. You know, I'm not knocking the bill at all. I just
It
don't
was fine
understand.
yesterday too, or the other day. I just want to
Oh,
say.
it did? Okay. Yeah, I'm not knocking the bill at all. As a matter of fact, I applaud it. However, what about Black people? We've been over here in this country, got dragged from our homeland, brought over here, enslaved. Our ancestors have been enslaved, oppressed. You know, we've had to fight through Jim Crow and all this other kind of stuff. And even today, we're still getting brutalized by the police. We're still being systematically and systemically oppressed through, you know, loans and housing and redlining and all these other things. And yeah, there have been like laws and stuff put in place, but there's not a bill directly for Black people. Like everybody else can benefit from the civil rights laws that were passed in the 60s, whether it be women, the LGBT community, Asians, any people of color. But there's nothing specific, just the Black people. And I think it's time, you know, I do. I think it's time. And I mean, like I said, I'm not against the Asian hate bill. I think that it's a great thing. I just think Black folks need something too. And it's just frustrating knowing that we've been in this country for so many centuries. Most of us have been here. Our ancestors were brought here against their will, kidnapped and brought here against our will. And not much is like happening on that front as it relates to keeping us safe and protected. Like there's an anti-Asian hate bill, but there's no anti-don't kill Black people because they Black bill. You know what I'm saying? Or there's no anti-stop pulling Black folks over because they driving while Black bill. There's no anti stop appraising Black people's homes lower than you would their neighbor, their white neighbor, just because they're Black bill. There's none of that. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's time. What do you guys think?
Definitely think that it's telling that we can see that different orders are being made, like you said, within watching some of the things that we saw domestically, as well as foreign, you know, treaties and things are being taken, are being pushed to the forefront and getting done through Congress, but we aren't seeing the type of commitment and urgency for addressing the things within, you know, African American, if you will, or however you want to label the community, as far as, you know, individuals who are indigenous to this land as well as other lands prior to being taken, and like you said, and forced to make, you know, something out of, you know, what was essentially nothing for you, no space for you to be, you know. And so I definitely think that that's something that's telling from this administration, as well as others, because again, it's not being addressed. It's not being put towards the forefront. It's not being things that we see are shown as appreciative for the votes, for the time, for the energy, for all of the things that's being said, or for the things that are being done. And I think that's also telling for hopefully for people to see, you know, because as you can tell, we see actions being taken in other communities to make sure that they feel, hey, you're protected, you're heard. You know what I'm saying? We got you over here. You know what I'm saying? This administration, we move in, you know, we're trying to be progressive, da 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 da. But okay, well, we're not going to address, you know, the wrongs that have been originally, you know what I'm saying, created. And that's one of the things that this administration initially said that they were going to do with their whole, you know, Black American plan, and this, that, and the third. But like we've seen from time to time, with just different rhetoric that has been spewed from this presidency, that it's not necessarily that this seems to be a priority or one that's something that they look to even want to address. Sadly, I feel like in some senses, um, and that's the biggest message that I think that I'm able to hear from it. You know what I mean? Because it's like you said, we're seeing action getting taken swiftly when it's coming to other issues within this first, I don't know, we had 90 days in office, so it might be 60 some odd. I don't know, everything was kind of pushed back a little bit with the inauguration and things, but or swearing in.
We're
However,
closer to like 120 days.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I didn't know if we had already surpassed it, but I know we were coming up on almost 6 months into the year, so definitely
Yeah.
felt we were getting there at least, but yeah, so those are some of my thoughts in regards to that. And I know, Malik, if you have something that you want to talk about real quick.
Oh yeah. I got something I want to say about the anti-hate bill, anti-Asian hate bill that just was passed into law. I think it was this month actually, right? So I just find it interesting. I'm going to bring it back to the Israel and Palestine situation real quick. So with Israel and Palestine, I find it interesting that the United States government can aid Israel, right, in their plight. But when it comes to Black people, Black Americans here in this country, they can't give us any type of aid for our businesses that were destroyed, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, other areas throughout the country, Rosewood, stuff like that. We can't give money for our thriving economic communities that could have produced a lot of wealth for us today. Currently, we can't get any aid for that. We can't get any reparations done. They have to, have hearings about just doing research about it. Like they have to pass bills just to get research done. That's ridiculous. Our plights been going on for hundreds of years, and you look at juxtapose that to the Asian people, Asian Americans, right? They get a crime bill after going through a couple months of just a little bit of hate, and you see Black boys, Black women, Black men, Black little girls, Black people, period, all shapes, genders, and whatever else you want to describe them, but Black people essentially, they're getting they're under siege by police essentially, and we can't even get the George Floyd Policing Act passed, right? And that sparked riots, that damaged buildings. Black people are losing their lives and all this stuff. We can't get any of that, but and of course, Black people have been getting targeted by white supremacists as well as the Asians. So we've been getting what the Asians got and then some, and we can't even get a bill passed, right? They said they're gonna pledge like what, $1 billion, $50 billion to Black businesses. That hasn't been even 1 billion of it hasn't even been completed yet, and it's been almost a year now. It's coming up, so it's only 250 million they said has been gone out to Black businesses and Black initiatives. So they're dragging their feet on that. So it's a array of issues. I just find it very interesting that when it comes to Black people, everybody can drag their feet. Nothing gets done. It's going to be hard. It's all these excuses. But when it comes to like other groups, Asians, Jewish people, it's no excuses. Here's the money. Here's the funding. Everything is done quick, smooth, no problem. But when it's Black people, it's always some type of excuse. And the media tells us, well, but see, you got to look at it this angle. They find every little exception, every little excuse they can on not giving Black people what they need. It has to stop. And I think the solution is keep applying the pressure to your local government, state government, and federal government. Sorry, guys, I was long-winded on that, but we can move into our next little clip here.
Hang on, before you play that clip, I want to say something. I don't think that you were long-winded, but I also wanted to say that
it was right on time.
Yeah, and but the one thing the only pushback I have on what you said is the amount of time Asians have been experiencing hate. They've been experiencing hate since they've come to this country too. It's just been different and not as long and not as talked about. And the reason why I say that is because remember when they first started to migrate to this country, first of all, their migration was voluntary, right? So that's a huge difference. But when they did begin migrating to this country, they were living in terrible conditions. They built a lot of the trains and stuff like that, especially out in California during the gold, like I think it was during the gold rush. I might have it confused, but I do know that they had experienced a lot. The Japanese internment camps during the war. I think it was the Second World War. So Asian, and then even with the coronavirus, you know, calling it the China flu and things like that. So Asian people have definitely had, that's the reason why I say I'm not against having the anti-Asian hate bill at all, because they've definitely had their fair share of experiences with hate and things of that nature. I'm just, you know, saying Black people have and still continue to have these experiences and nothing is being done. So it's like more power to the Asian community. I'm happy for them. I'm glad they were able to get that, you know, but at the same, not but, because I don't want to erase anything I just said. Nevertheless, Black folks still need something. We keep getting, they've been promising us 40 acres and a mule for the hundreds of years, and we haven't gotten any of that, you know? And I think that it's important to just point that out, you know, and just like you said, with them not being able to pass the George Floyd bill on the day of George Floyd's funeral, they also had an anti-lynching bill that was that died in Congress because Rand Paul blocked it. And it's like, I mean, they're just saying it's not okay to lynch people, and that's a problem. It's not okay to lynch people, specifically Black people, because Black people get lynched more than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? And it's very frustrating because, you know, here you have a whole group of people that definitely contribute to American society at a very, very, very high rate. We're the reason why this president is in office. We are the largest consumers in the country. You know, we're creative. We just contribute so much of ourselves to society, to American culture and to American society. And we just can't get protected for anything. Yet we continue to contribute and love a country that doesn't seem to love us back. And we just, every time we get some new president in or new administration in, we always hope that they're going to love us back the way that we love them, but it doesn't seem that way. So with that being said, you just go ahead and play the clip unless you guys have anything you want to say to that.
I do actually wanted to respond to you about me saying that, you know, that I'm saying that it's recent. I guess I should clarify that. Like what's recent is how, you know, Asians are being specifically targeted, how similar to how Black people have always been targeted here. Like they were specifically being targeted thanks to something that you mentioned, coronavirus. But prior to that, you know, it wasn't all this media propaganda about Asian hate, right? Because, I mean, it probably was very little Asian hate. I'm sure Asians got some heat, but it wasn't on this whole countrywide scale, so to speak, right? And back to the past, on comparison to, you know, their past stuff, I would say that, yeah, they did have those internment camps, but they were properly compensated. If you want to juxtapose that to Black people, they were in slavery, Jim Crow, you know, unable to be able to read, all these other Black codes, those laws and stuff like that, and the war against drugs, all this stuff, and we haven't been properly compensated. So, and then, you know, this latest example, Asians started getting targeted, you know, people start hating on them, trying to attack them, kill them, whatever. They get a bill. Us, we've been going through this since we've been on the country. We get no bill. We get no bill. They get a bill passed before us. So it's insulting, essentially, to us, I think. It's like, wow, so it's selective here. So you guys care more about the Asians than you do about the people who actually built this country. I mean, you mentioned some railroads on the West Coast, but what about the whole country? It was built off the blacks of,
The backs of
slaves.
Black people. No, I agree with that. I definitely agree. I think you and I are saying the same thing, but I'm just not trying to minimize their plight, right?
I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just saying that, they have similar plights to us, but they get compensated, they get aided,
I
they get
agree. I don't disagree that they
redress.
haven't been right. I don't disagree that
Yeah.
they've been compensated or um there's another word I'm trying to blank on, but pretty much is made whole to an extent, right? The legal term for being made whole.
Yeah,
They've been
restitution.
right, yeah, they received some sort of restitution for their experience, right? Whereas Black people really haven't. Like you had laws that were specifically targeted towards Black people, and they were anti-Black, right?
Right.
But there's no pro-Black laws, and I get it. I agree with you to that extent. I'm just saying that,
Yeah, I'm not trying to minimize their play. I was just trying
yeah.
to point out the comparisons, how they
Mhm.
go through some, we go through similar things.
And then they get
benefits.
right,
They're
which
like,
is
well,
exactly
no,
what
you
I
just
was saying.
accept it. Yeah.
Right, which is, but also too that they got something before we did, which is exactly how I started off, saying, it's interesting that, they voluntarily have come to this country. They've definitely been contributors to American culture and society. But Black people have been some of the largest contributors, and we've been the most oppressed, yet we still have not received any type of compensation or restitution or anything for that matter as it really. I mean, there have been laws passed. Let's not make it seem like we're still in slavery days and Jim Crow days.
Guys, we saying the same things.
I know, but let me finish my sentence and then we're gonna go into the next thing. And it's not to say that we're not. We haven't received those things, but it's just to say,
Oh, but we haven't. And that
there have been laws passed.
Right there. No, we haven't. Because be honest, we have not. And again, I've let you guys go back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to have to interject here. No, we have not. Because if you're going to sit here and say to me, well, yes, because you can go shop anywhere, you can go eat anywhere, you can go do anything that you want. Yes, but I also have that along with any other citizen of this nation. I mean, any other person that comes.
Right, which is why you should have let me finish. Hold on, which is why you should have let me finish, because what I was saying is exactly what you're saying.
At all.
Which is exactly what you're saying, Everett, is that although, they passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, like I said before, which is giving Black people more freedoms to be able to do things, they have not made anything specific to Black people. Right. Which is right. And that's why I was trying to finish up. And what I'm also going to say is, with that being said, there's a whole mindset that Black people, what they got is enough. And the problem with that, one of the biggest problems with what we received so far goes right into what we're about, this clip we're about to play. It's this type of mindset that the president has as to why we're still in this position that we're in, and is why we're probably not going to get anything out of this administration, despite the fact at their inauguration and all that other stuff, how they made all these empty promises to Black people.
Well, I'll say even still prior to, because when we talked about this, when we looked at the prior show, as far as looking at what was the language, what are the terms that's being said when we look at, the plan for Black America, and a lot of it was a lot of statistics and things from either past administrations or plans that came in from there, and just overinflated numbers that don't necessarily have direct effect as to the environment or that community. And my whole thing with what we were saying is, again, like, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly in regards to not disrespecting anybody else's plight and what they had to come through to this country or what they're going through in their countries. And that's all fine and dandy. But the reason, like we all said, within making this show was to talk about, the culture, and to talk about the culture from a standpoint of individuals who actually are able to have a level of privilege within this country to understand certain things about, the community and the deficiencies within it, as well as, maybe reasons in which those things are. And so I want to say, like, yeah, like, no, we definitely have issues with how, again, other other countries and other issues are being placed to the forefront in front of ours. And I agree with what Malik was saying earlier. You know, we definitely need to put pressure on local politicians as well as our, you know, senators and excuse me, yeah, our congressmen, in order for us to see these type of changes, because it's like, yo, we can sit here and be like, oh, you know, this, that, and the third, but like it has to be some type of change within the leadership that's coming in, because it is clearly showing, because from the way in which, like you said, this clip that we're about to watch, and even a clip prior to that, when we were going leading into the whole election, and it was the if you don't vote for me, then you're not black statement.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so there's like a certain level of like disrespect or undercarding, if you will, of
It's undervalued.
yeah, undervalued,
Under underappreciated too. That's another one.
Right.
appreciation,
Right.
um, and flat out disrespect that seems
Yep.
to come from this administration, in regards to this community. And honestly, if this is just one vote, a voice that's, you know, hopefully being able to reach some people to be like, listen, like, you know, politics are important, but also make sure that you know why you within the system of, you know, politics and all of that. And the third, you doing what you need to be doing for yourself and your community. You doing what you need to be doing to, you know, notify people, to tell people, to try to educate. And I know sometimes that's not the easiest thing, because like someone said the other day, like, you know, you could try to do the right thing, but until somebody want to hear what they want to hear, they're not gonna hear it. And so, like, you know, which is why I go back and forth with you guys a lot of times on a lot of stuff, because it's like, listen, it don't matter if it's not, you know what I'm saying, something that somebody's gonna catch in the moment. But the fact of the matter is when they're ready to hear that, or if they ever are, then they'll be able to hear it from where you're coming from and accept it and understand it. And I think that's the same things that we have to do within our community when we look at a lot of things, not necessarily just politics. It can go to religions, it can go to relationships, it can go to a lot. And that's why, you know what I'm saying, I think we talked about creating this show, and I'm gonna go back into this because it went a little bit further off rhymes. But I definitely want to bring this clip up and let us get going with this one real fast, which was a statement from the president, and it was off of a Twitter thread of a lady named Olivia Rondale. Rondale, I believe it may be pronounced.
Even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did. But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact.
Excuse me. Okay. So I don't know if that clip necessarily was truly accurate in regards to like the statement in regards to George Floyd's death and Martin Luther King's death, because I wasn't around for Dr. King's death. So I don't necessarily know how people received it. And I can speak to the way what took place in my lifetime when George Floyd, you know, passed. And for me, in the moment, it almost would have been passable, because sometimes, like, you know, when you living in things, and a lot of times when you living in things and you really focused on a certain thing, as we all have attested to in our lives when we've been like that, you kind of like other stuff that, you know, you got going on in the world might not really affect you as much until you look back at it and see, you know, the effect of it. And what I mean by that is, in my life, I think around this time I was working, you know what I'm saying, as I'm always doing, but you know, working really hard. And that was like one of the main things. I had my head up and I knew what was going on in society, but like the overall impact of it all, as far as people getting into the streets and people, you know what I'm saying, people, if you will, protesting and walking down blocks and doing us all over the nation at a certain time, you know what I'm saying? It was it was exhilarating to see, because it was like, wow, like so many people are just fed up. And then also at the time, everybody was kind of indoors. It was really like there were not a lot of people kind of coming together and stuff like that. So to see that happening in that moment with that conditionings and everything that happened, it was like, yo, you know what? Forget all of it, like the health, whatever. Like we so tired of just the injustice that's going on that we just like, we want it to be known that, you know what I'm saying? People are making a stand. And so from that standpoint, I can almost understand how a person can say this was an impactful moment, because prior to this moment, yeah, maybe a Black life was taken. You know what I'm saying? Not maybe, yes, they were. And even after that moment, they were still taken. But nonetheless, and it's not a but, that, like you said, not to deflate any life that was taken. However, when we look at the things that spun from that, you know what I'm saying, we seen a lot of unity that took place that we didn't necessarily see. And again, I don't necessarily know what the temperature, as we say nowadays, was of the nation at the time of Dr. King's death, as far as people coming together and mourning and things of that nature, or uniting and protesting. But I do know, as we've said before, at the time of his death, he wasn't as liked as he had been prior to, so that also could have an effect on Dr. King's and the impact of his life loss.
I think it's important to remember what was going on in society at that time versus what was going on in society at the time of George Floyd's death. At the time of Dr. King's death, you had Jim Crow was still cracking, right? So people were expecting certain things, right? There was an expectation that Black people would be treated as a lower class citizen, right? There was this attitude, there was a whole lot more, there was less acknowledgement of white supremacy. There was a whole lot more racial discrimination going on. Like there was segregation, all of those things were going on. Now here we are 50 years later, 60 years later, where you have a bunch of people that have learned about that and learned and have been taught that that's not right. That's not how you treat people. Whereas back then, that wasn't the attitude with a lot of people. It wasn't the attitude with most. And remember, he was, like you said, a lot of people didn't like him. They had, all the marches and all that other kind of stuff prior to his passing. But you also had other leaders out there like Malcolm X. His birthday was just this past week. You know what I mean? You had so many other, you had the Rainbow Push Coalition with, you just had the NAACP, you just had all these different organizations and everything else pushing forward, but they were working from more of a foundational level. They were more, I don't want to say grassroots because there's still grassroots organizations today, but they were working from a place where they didn't have a foundation. They were establishing that foundation. So the impact of George Floyd's is different because for some of the similar factors that you stated, everybody in the world is isolated at that time when it came out. You don't really have a whole lot but the news and social media to watch. And then they just keep playing it over and over and over and over and over again. So it had a different impact. But immediately after, because I remember asking my mom this question, like, Mom, what happened when Martin Luther King died? How did society respond to it? Especially Black people? Because, she was alive during that time. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, really. When you look at the grand scheme and time of Black people in this country, Martin Luther King didn't die that long ago, And what she said to me was, even though he was nonviolent, it was riots everywhere. Them was burn the country down. They were rioting in almost every major city. They were all over the place tearing stuff up because they killed Dr. King. You know what I mean? And remember, Dr. King and Malcolm X died close in time. So you have the two greatest leaders, and they y'all know they hated Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? They hated him. And so I think understanding that's not too far-fetched from what happened when George Floyd died. And I think the reason why the president believes that the impact was stronger is because he probably saw it on more of a global level, Whereas it doesn't mean that things didn't happen on a global level back then. Media wasn't what it is today, so he may not have necessarily seen it. Or maybe people in other countries didn't give a damn about Martin Luther King, just to keep it 100% honest. They might not have cared about him because he wasn't impacting them directly or them in their country, right? He was making strides and moves here in the United States, trying to, trying to help people be able to sit on a bus wherever they wanted or go eat at a lunch counter and, just live a regular free life and get basic, decent human rights here in America, because America, I'm going to say, is one of the worst, most racist countries in the world. And the reason why I have to say one of them is because there's a whole lot of other countries out here that's racist as hell. You know what I'm saying? And we don't talk about them, but this is where we are, and people always look to the United States for some sort of guidance or some sort of something, you know what I mean? We lead. And so I think that it's important to understand that I don't agree with his comments. I think that I don't agree with his comments at all. I think that we need to make sure that we are paying closer attention to what's really going on all over the world, especially too, since they look to us as Americans. And I think that it's important to recognize that the things that are happening all over the world do happen here, and that we have to try to find ways to pave the way for them to follow suit, But that's my opinion about that aspect.
Yeah, my thoughts on the video is, President Biden, to say something like that, I feel like he really doesn't respect Dr. King, and he respect the civil rights movement, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. He helped get a lot of laws passed, and and you can't really compare him to George Floyd. Like, you can't compare those two human beings. Like, one is a global icon, and another is known for basically, just getting brutally murdered by the police. Like, outside of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated, he actually did stuff positive in the world. I'm not saying that George Floyd didn't, but he didn't do it to the level Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did, and no one would even debate or argue or contend with that statement. So for him to say that assassination had a lesser impact than the murder of George Floyd, that shows that he just lacks respect for the whole movement, which I already knew he did based off of like the bills he's actually signed into law, like the crime bill. He was the author of that. So, I mean, he doesn't really have any respect there. So that's my thought. And another thought real quick, before we move on to the next segment here is, I find it funny that he can say all this stuff, but he's not pushing 150% for the George Floyd Policing Act to be signed. Like he's saying, oh, George Floyd murder had such a profound impact, even greater than the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination. But he's not hounding Congress every day. Okay, y'all guys can pass the Asian bill. What about my George Floyd bill? I want that done. And it's no excuses. Democrats are at least, what are they, tied with the Republicans? It should get through. I mean, come on, it's common sense.
They're not tied. Kamala Harris is the tiebreaker.
Exactly. So, there's no excuse. They're putting their foots in their mouth. They're dragging their feet. They're just hushed about it. They don't want to do anything.
They don't want to do it.
That's basically it. Right. They just don't, and they're making it obvious. I hope Black people actually wake up and see, like, these Democrats aren't for us. They're just using you guys for political gain. And that's why I always say we need to rethink our thought process about these elections. I know everybody like, get out and vote, get out and vote. Well, voting Democrat ain't working. We need to figure out another strategy. I don't care what it is.
Yeah, I agree, but I keep telling you,
I don't care. I'm just saying, Sam, I don't care what it is. I mean, if we have to stop voting or we got to vote Republican to get what we want, I'm down for us
I
to
don't
do
think
it.
that's
If
gonna
we
get
got
us
to
what
vote
we want.
Democrat.
And
Well,
it-
Democrat obviously hasn't worked in the past 30 years.
Neither
So,
is Republican. Remember, Black people are traditionally Republican. So
but we
that's
haven't
why I
been
keep-
traditionally voting Republican in the past 30 years, so we don't know if they're willing to cut up more deals
I
than
just
the
don't.
Democrats.
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to help Black people. I think we need a new party who's Black and Black people's interests are at the forefront. But you know, you and I
I'm
have
just-
that
I'm just
debate once a
saying
month,
We just need to
Malik.
rethink. I'm just saying we need to rethink it. I don't care what we do, whether it's a new party, vote
I hear you.
Republican.
But I think you
hold
make
the
a.
Democrats hostage. I don't care what we do.
But I
just
do think you
we
make a
need to-
good point as far as them not wanting to do anything, right? Which leads me to the next clip, which is the Tulsa, Oklahoma situation, right? So there's going to be a little historical aspect to this clip. It's going to give you a little background about it, but it's been since the 20s and they're just now having investigations about it. It's 2021. This happened in 1921. You know what I'm saying? So everyone, whenever you're ready with that clip, so we can go ahead and show the folks.
Okay.
You guys got it? Well, pretty much.
Okay. 1 second, Sam.
Yeah, I'm gonna just talk a little bit about what was going on back then. Back then, you know, there was the whole segregation thing, and Black people decided, hey, you know what? We're gonna have our own. These were all Black communities, and they were thriving. You know, they were doing really, really, really well. They were making a lot of money economically. And here's the clip. Just go ahead and get it going. It's on mute too.
June 1 of 1921, a white mob burned to the ground the Greenwood community of Tulsa. The white mob, consisting of thousands of people, murdered Black residents, looted their property, and burned more than 1,000 homes, churches, schools, and businesses. That mob, fueled by racial fear and hatred, was aided and abetted by some of the very government officials who were supposed to be protecting the innocent residents and property owners of Greenwood. In the massacre's immediate aftermath, local authorities placed thousands of Black residents into internment camps out of fear of what the authorities characterized as a so-called, quote, Negro uprising. The Tulsa massacre resulted in property damage estimated to be anywhere between $25 million and $100 million. Meanwhile, the survivors and descendants of the massacre remain without compensation for the harms inflicted on them. And neither the state of Oklahoma nor the city of Tulsa have provided direct compensation to massacre survivors and their descendants. May 31 and June 1 of 1921, a white mob.
Yeah, so there's that. I mean, it goes a lot deeper into that, but they pretty much killed almost everybody in the community. There were only a few survivors. And they had farmland, they had businesses, there were stores, there were grocery stores, there were, you know, clothing stores, there were, they had a really good market. Like, and when I say market, I don't mean the market you go buy your chicken at. I mean like economic market. They were making a lot of money. They were doing really, really well. And it's interesting. I don't remember who said it. I don't remember if it was a comedian or if it was a rapper or something, but I was on my IG or something one day and I saw them and they were like, I think it was Godfrey. And he had said something to the effect of, you know, it's interesting because when you talk about segregation in this country, you know, Black people decided at some point, hey, you guys don't want us here, so let's leave and go back to Africa, right? That was with Marcus Garvey. Then it was like, no, we're going to discredit Marcus Garvey because we don't want you here, but we don't want you to leave either. So then there's no huge migration. Then it's like, all right, segregation. We don't want you to have, we want you to have separate but equal with Plessy versus Ferguson and all that other kind of stuff. All right, we're going to come over here. We're going to create our own communities. We're going to do our own thing. Oh, it's thriving over there. All right, no, we don't want that to happen either. So we're going to go ahead and bomb it. It's like, well, what do you really want from us? Like, you don't want us here, but you don't want us to leave. You don't want us to, in your establishments.
I'll tell you what they want, Sam. They want oppression. That's what they love.
Money.
They
They
love
want our money.
oppression. They love oppressing black folk. White
Oppression is more than
supremacists love
money.
oppressing
I
black folk.
agree, but they also
because-
want our money in the meantime. Like you want to be able to keep us down here and take all the value. You see what I'm saying? Because that continues to make them rich. It was still in a capitalist nation, right? They're still able to gain make that financial gain off of us and keep it low, so we can continue to give them that provision and continue to make them rich.
I'll say money is one thing, but I think it's more than that. It's a mentality. Like
Agreed.
to feel like superior to somebody, to feel like they can't, like I can talk to you, Craig. Like that's why you see people feel the need, like I have the like, you know what I'm saying? Like this, it's a superior, like that don't got nothing to do with a certain level amount of money, because you could be, you know what I'm saying, a poor person who has a certain level of privilege that act, you know what I'm saying, that can play a role and then can get, you know what I'm saying, treated a certain type of way. So I can't say it's just money. I can go with the oppression though. Again,
I'm not saying at all that it's only money.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
No. Not in any way, shape, form, or fashion am I saying that it's only money. I'm saying money is definitely a element of that, though.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I just think that, you know,
drawn to that part too, like like
Mhm.
that. It's you know what I'm saying? It's like a mentality thing. We want to like not only control like the money part for sure, but like
Mhm.
more than that, we want to, you know, see you destroy yourself. We want to see you like, you know, we can't necessarily do so much, and I think that's why we've seen some people talk about it like, okay, you know, sure, we could do things like, you see how they did it. Oh, they just acknowledging it 100 years later. You know what I'm saying? 100 years later, some stuff that took place, right? And you just acknowledge, and then you ain't even acknowledge it with compensation of that 25 to the 100 mil that you estimated it to be at. I ain't hear nothing about they were going to go ahead and give these citizens this money, this, that, and the third. So, like,
No, because they're just now holding hearings. They're just now, 100 years later, are just now holding investigative hearings about it. That is an atrocity.
So it's like you know the adjustment, you know what it was, what took place, you know the people, you know the people's people are still there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you could write, man, come on, stop playing with us. You feel what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, yo, all right, that's how you trying to play it. That's all right. I see what it is, but understand when you run into certain other ones that it's not going down like that. And I'm not saying it from the standpoint of you know, tearing down nobody else's home or nothing, but it's just a simple fact. Like we talk about this all the time. I don't care if it's just me going somewhere to eat or if it's me going to go buy a t-shirt. Like it will be a level of respect on all fronts, period. And I think until, you know what I'm saying, and it's not necessarily to say that this is something that's going to necessarily come across from the president signing the bill, but it can come across from just day to day, because I'm a big advocate of you can control the environment in which you live in on your own. So, you know, if I'm going to just another rate, we gonna work on whenever you see me. I don't know nothing about nobody else, but whenever you see this face, you're not gonna make that mistake again. And hopefully you make sure that you don't say you care about this as you go on about your day. But we're gonna have a certain level of respect here. We're gonna have a certain level of, you know, treat people with dignity and things of that nature here. But like you said, to this whole point though, you know, a lot of this has spurred because of this level of superiority that people have in this country, and where they feel like they don't have to acknowledge certain wrongs, that wasn't necessarily them, so why should they have to address it? Or, you know, like you said earlier, you already receive, like, look, you can go to school, you can eat here, you can live there. Like, no, like, no, that wouldn't be built there if it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? So don't talk to me about being able to be here. No, like, you know what I'm saying? Better off not even talking to me about it, because you feel me, like you don't even really understand what we're talking about. So yeah, I totally agree, and I definitely think that that's just one of the like wildest things ever that's taking place. But
Well, I want to say I love how, like, you know, they always bring up the case separate but equal, separate but equal situation. And my thoughts are it's never been separate but equal. It's separate but unequal. Since the founding of this country, it's always been like that. It's always been separate but unequal. But to the money point I had pointed out, if they really cared about money with us, which we don't have more money than them, right? We don't have more resources than them. they would just put us back in slavery. White supremacists would put us back in slavery, but that wouldn't work, right? That's not going to work, right? Because you would still need majority of white people to be on board with it, which they aren't anymore. So that's not going to happen. So that's that point. So they can't do that, but they do get jealous and envious of blacks who are successful because they feel like that's an attack on the system of white supremacy, which it is, which that system needs to be destroyed. But I'll give it to white supremacists. They fight for their system. They're on code. A lot of white people are on code, majority, more than you think, right? You think, oh, well, it's not all white people, but it's more than you think. And a lot of white people subconsciously enjoy the privilege that they have, the white privilege. Like they don't want to give that up. Because I was listening to, this is actually sports related, talk show, First Take. I was listening to Max Kellerman. He was talking about privilege. And he was like, well, I want people to have a fair shake and all this, but he's like, I don't want to give up my privilege to do it though. And I was like, that's interesting.
Don't work like that.
Yeah, I just caught it. I was like, he was all cool and I was agreeing with everything he was saying about equality and all that stuff, but he's like, yeah, I don't want the white guy shouldn't have to give up his privilege, essentially was what he was saying. I'm not
So
supporting
wait,
him.
let me ask you something. Was his perspective that a white person shouldn't have to give up their white privilege, but Black people and other people of color should have privilege too? Or was it more so like, I don't want to give up my privilege in order for them to have it?
Well, the situation was with the Tim Tebow situation, right? How he just got off the street and got a new job, even though he doesn't have talent, even though he doesn't have any experience. It's just like, hey, you're my buddy or whatever. Everybody said, oh, sports is supposed to be fair. If you're the best or if you could play, that's what matters. It doesn't matter who you know, all that stuff. It's supposed to be equal. That's why in football and basketball, you see predominantly Black people dominate because it's actually equal. It's fair. When it's fair, Black people tend to win. But when it's unfair, well, we see the results of that, right? I don't have to say more. So that was what he was basing his opinion off. Like, well, Tim Tebow shouldn't have to give up his privilege and all of that stuff for others to have opportunity, essentially. And I'm like, what is he talking about? He's contradicting himself. He's saying that, okay, people should have equal opportunity. You should have privilege, but he also didn't want to give it up. And Max said, I personally don't want to give up my privilege. So it just let me believe, like, okay, although a lot of white people aren't racist or white supremacists, a lot more than you would think, they don't want to give up what they have in order for Black people to get equal around where they
even playing field. Yeah.
But yeah, basically, they don't want to make things fair. So, they still want to be on top and still dominate. And yeah, y'all basically hit it on the head with the rest of the points.
I just want to put on a caveat, like, unfortunately, it don't even have to be white people. It's sometimes
that part.
You know what I mean? And this, again, I'm not trying to take the show off to the level, but sometimes it's people within your own community that don't want to see other people receive certain things. And so they'll act the type of way.
But that's that mentality. I was going to say that earlier, but I lost it. Way back when I was talking about even Black people as they relate to Palestine, right? When you talk about Black people as a whole, just as a whole community, there's a whole crabs in a barrel syndrome, just not wanting to see the next Black person move up. But that's part of the propaganda and indoctrination that has been instilled in Black people stemming predating slavery, right? Because Black people, like Africa was a huge dynasty, right? There were all these different dynasties in Africa and nobody could infiltrate those dynasties until they were able to divide and conquer. And they were able to divide and conquer it because they were able to put these ideas in each other's heads about our people. So like I saw a meme, it was a clip. It was supposed to be a joke, but it was just a good parody. And it was like you had a Black American and you had an African. And like they're going back and forth, like, wait, so you mean to tell me the African is like, so you mean to tell me you guys are not inherently violent and you don't rob, steal, and kill everybody, and you're not just this angry people that's just going around doing all of this stuff and robbing people and burglarizing houses and beating people up and just doing all this stuff? And then the Black person's like, so wait a minute, you mean to tell me you're not out there throwing spears at animals and living in huts and living in the jungle and doing X, Y, and Z? And they're like, no. And then they're like, you know, part of that propaganda and indoctrination is telling each other's culture that this is what it's like in African American culture, and this is what it's like in African culture, just so we could have this obscure, low valued view of our brothers and sisters, and to help prevent us from becoming more unified. One thing I wanted to say really quickly before I just jump into the motivational minute, in case you guys have something that you want to add, is that when it relates to stuff like that, you know, that's why it's important to just be informed and read books and stuff like that. I think talking also to people. I remember when I was in high school, I had my high school social studies teacher that took a bunch of students to Africa. And he told us this story about how there were Africans there that kept calling him a nigger, and he didn't like it. And he told them to stop saying that, right? Because they didn't really understand the context in which that word came from and all of that, right? And because it was only what they got to see on television. And when he sat down and he started educating African people about African American culture, they were able to understand, like, oh my God, that's just a stereotype, because all you see on TV when you talk about Black people are people playing sports, people, you know, fighting, violence, or entertaining, like, you know, Sambo, you know, and especially at that time, you don't see Black families and the fact that Black people, African American people, have the ability to thrive in this country. And one thing that I wanted to say too, as it related to the money, it's more about not that we make more money, it's more that we have a higher spending power. I mean, that's just a fact. You know what I'm saying? We spend more money than anybody else in this country. Did you guys want to add to that, or can I just jump on into our motivational minute?
You got it.
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I found a quote by James Baldwin. It's a real short quote, but he said that not everything that is spaced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's spaced. And I thought that was really profound. You know what I mean? Because when you have all of the things that we have going on in our nation, no matter if it's, I mean, not even just in our nation, just globally, right? Because if you look at the Palestinian and Israel war or conflict, if you look at the anti-Asian hate and the non-anti-Asian hate, and then the whole situation with the way Black people are oppressed in America, nothing is going to change unless it is faced. I mean, you can't fix it all. That's fine. And I don't think Black people in America expect everything to be perfect, but you can't address the fact that, I mean, you can't say, hey, we've given you whatever it is that you needed based on the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and you're giving all this very specific stuff to all these other people, like trying to convince people to cease fire out in Palestine or doing the anti-Asian hate bill, and nothing for Black people. You're not facing the problem head on. And so I think, you know, I just encourage our viewers to just do what you can to try to find ways to influence the community, contact politicians like Malik said earlier, do whatever you can in a positive way to try to help uplift the community one way or another, even if it means to just educate yourself and pass the education down to next generations. Because we cannot make the changes that are necessary in our community unless we face the problems that we have. So that's what I have as far as our motivational minute is concerned. And that actually kind of ties up everything that I was trying to say in conclusion. So I'm going to give you guys my nope, you know what? I'll just let y'all go. I'll give y'all my social media stuff after you guys finish.
All right. Well, thanks. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up with my final thoughts real quick. I definitely think that this is something that our administration needs to address soon within our community. This is one of the founding backbones to this administration being in office. my address to the community would be that we have to strongly look at if we do not receive the things that we should be receiving from this administration, if there will be a second term. I definitely think that we need to see something on the books um, besides just like you said, studies and reports, to actually something that can address, the senseless killing, like you said, financial aid, opportunities. It could be opportunity zone type situations, things of that nature, home ownership opportunities as well. Um, Capital gains taxes, laws, and some people.
Some interest-free
Oh,
loans.
yeah, open it up, refinance. I want the whole thing. Like, put us on the whole gamut. Like, let us get in the game.
Free healthcare.
Yeah, amen, brother. Keep going. You feel what I'm saying? We
Add some
definitely.
points to people's credit score.
Oh, amen, 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 amen. And please, write in the comments any other things that you would love for us to go ahead and put on that list one time. But
Right.
definitely, we want to get that administration to take this very seriously, and to address, you know what I'm saying, people and the constituents that got you in this position. Because one thing about it is, you could best believe that I can tell you about one or two, or I don't know how many more, but I know there's going to be a few more that definitely will be strongly considering it when it comes time to, voting again, um, in another 3 years or so, when that time comes due. So I definitely think that while it's good to see our administration is addressing things swiftly, I think that they need to address some of the more traditional issues that's been here facing this country. In particular, that means ones that's been faced by our Black community. And if you want to do something as a direct answer that you can, it could be starting with the police brutality, and trying to address that issue. Not trying, but addressing that issue. But lastly, I just want to say, guys can catch us on What's Up Wednesdays. We do have those going every Wednesday. You also can find us here, Counterpoise Podcast, Counterpoise Podcast, the page on Facebook, also on Instagram, as well as YouTube. And again, you can catch me out at That Guy 2104 on Instagram. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, my final thoughts are just be the change you want to see. If you want to see change, get active in your community, get active with your local, state, federal governments, like I said. And, if you want to change, stop doing the same thing you've been doing for the past how many years you've been alive. You got to switch it up. Black people, you can't keep doing the same thing. We have to make changes. We got to look within ourselves. And that's not the fault of white supremacy. We can't keep being consumers all the time. We have to, promote entrepreneurship and promote our businesses. I know there's problems with our businesses, but there are businesses, so we got to fix them. So we got to demand our businesses to be better. We got to support them so they can be better. We got to ask the government to help us so our businesses and communities can be better. We're tired of our communities. We want to leave because of maybe poverty or some issues like that. Well, we need help and we need to demand it. Like, we can't keep living like this. Things have to change for the better. We need opportunity zones. We need benefits. I mean, if illegal immigrants could get some of this stuff and protections, we need to be able to get it too. I'm all for them getting their stuff. I just want us to get stuff. That's my thing. Everybody can get stuff, but I want us to get stuff. We don't get anything. So that's why I put a priority on us, because we don't get anything. Everybody gets this stuff. And I personally think we have a higher priority order. I think American citizen has a higher priority order than illegal immigrant. I mean, goodness sakes, they call them illegal immigrants because they didn't immigrate over here legally. And they're still getting more benefits than legal citizens, tax-paying legal citizens. That's not breaking the law. But people who are breaking the law can get more benefits than Black people. So it's just disrespectful on all levels. I don't like it. And that's it. I'm just going to wrap it up there. You guys can follow me at Malik M. Foster on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow Counterpoise Podcast on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Let us know what you think about this topic. Send a comment below if you want us to talk about something else. And that's all I got.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Samantha Renee _77 and on Facebook, Samantha Adams -ESQ. Wait, did I say that right? On IG, Samantha Renee 77 _ESQ, and on Facebook, Samantha Adams -ESQ. Again, we're on YouTube, Counterpoise Podcast. We are on Facebook and on Instagram, Counterpoise Podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you.
All right, DJ, hit that song.
Hey, hey.
Hey, check us out.